Like he's stirring up trouble.
Black Attack.
Black Girl.
About the Nerdery.
My movie can't come out now.
Oh, so is he serious?
Welcome to a new episode of the Nerdery. We haven't done this in a little while, but it's good to be back. Today, welcome Terry. We just went live, but today we're going to be talking about the latest in nerd news, and then we're going to be moving on to talking about DC comic book movies. G was on the call, but he just got dropped right before we went live. Not by me, though. All right. We will do introductions after the nerd news. So let's just move into what we're here to talk about. First up, before we talk about the regular nerdy stuff, rest in peace, Nichelle Nichols. Best known for portraying Uhura in the original Star Trek series and films. She was an inspiration to a lot of people. I personally know several people who were very inspired by her. And one person she really had an influence on was Martin Luther King Jr., to give an example. Although I will admit I'd never watched the original series. I've seen some of the original movies, but... Next up, Sony announced PlayStation All-Stars, a new loyalty program. People can earn points by playing games on their system and use those points to buy products. Anyone who is a member of PlayStation Plus will automatically get points every month. Next up, something I lost the image for, but... so I will just talk about it and not have an image for it. Joe Dante, who directed the original Gremlins movie, he had some fighting words. He accused Star Wars of stealing Gizmo's design from Gremlins for Grogu on The Mandalorian. So he was a bit salty about it.
You mean the puppet that was just a smaller version of the other puppet they made?
Puppet with big eyes, I guess. But, related to him, the reason he was doing interviews is because Gremlins is actually working on returning. They got a new animated series in the works and a new film. Next up, comic book writer Alan Grant passed away at the age of 73. He is best known for his work on Batman, Lobo, and Judge Dredd. Mojang, the company behind Minecraft, revised their rules this past week, basically forbidding any NFTs from being integrated into their game. The NFT market, which is already crashing, crashed even more after the news broke. NFT Worlds, whose entire company is built around creating NFTs for Minecraft, took the news hard and promised to create their own Minecraft-style game to accommodate their business strategy. Oh, we can't have NFTs on your game? Well, we'll just go make our own game, basically. Mojang clarified that NFTs would turn Minecraft into a game of the have and have-nots, which goes against their message of inclusion. Basically, some people would have cool NFTs for their Minecraft games, and that wouldn't be right to them. All right, a ton of news happened at the San Diego Comic-Con. We got our first look at X-Men 97, with the confirmation that Magneto is now leading the team. That's because in the series finale of the original X-Men animated series, Professor X went into outer space. Marvel, man, I lost a lot of images somewhere. But anyways, Marvel announced Phase 5 and 6 of their movie and TV slate, including a Thunderbolts movie, and 2 Avengers movies, The Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. We got a trailer for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, featuring the first footage of Namor. The Walking Dead announced a new spin-off for this series, this time focusing on Michonne and Rick Grimes. It's going to be 6 episodes long, and it's going to be replacing the movies they had planned to do. Avatar: The Last Airbender they're getting new animated movies featuring returning characters from the show, such as Aang and his group. DC. They showed footage from the Sandman series coming out tomorrow. Terry, I know you're really excited about that.
I'm super excited about that.
Are you waking up early? Do you do the whole midnight watch thing?
I don't know. Is it coming out at midnight? I might, actually.
I know Netflix usually does midnight launches.
Yeah, I'm not working tomorrow, so I might.
Other than that, DC didn't have much going on at Comic-Con. They had a Black Adam panel, and going into Comic-Con, everyone's like spreading rumors that Henry Cavill was going to show up and announce his return as Superman. That didn't happen. And in DC specific news, the company itself changed its URL and social media handles to remove the word comics. This could mean a change in priority, with even less money going into the publishing arm of DC. And finally, the biggest news this past week, Batgirl, a $90 million film that's basically completed, has been completely shelved by Warner Brothers. It featured Michael Keaton returning as Bruce Wayne, and it also had Brendan Fraser as the villain Firefly. But after test audiences saw it and ripped the movie to absolute shreds, executives deemed the movie was, quote, irredeemable, and decided to not spend any money reworking it or by worsening their reputation by releasing it on any platform. Also, apparently, as long as they don't release it, they can apply for a bunch of tax cuts. And that is the news. All right, I'm going to fix my windows here so it's nice and big so I can see better. All right. And let's get into introductions. Dan, what is your history on DC Comics itself? Were you a big fan or reader, or what was your...
When I was growing up, all my comic exposure was secondhand, so through my older brother. With him being a much more proficient artist than myself, he really enjoyed Batman from DC, but he did a lot of his artwork based off of the X-Men. So X-Men, Spider-Man, but for me, DC, as far as the comics go, I have to admit that it was much weaker in that aspect. When I was in university, I was introduced to some of the peripheral IP from DC. So obviously we know about Justice League, the Justice Society. I have to confess that Sandman, I had to pull up Wikipedia article on him. Although on a bit of a tangent, that I know that DC has picked up quite a lot of property from some from some of its failed competitors, and I have my thoughts on that. And as I dig through, let's say the golden and the silver age of comic history, there's some questionable duds out there, but there's also some weed in the chaff, I believe.
I'm not familiar with that phrase.
Okay, so when you're harvesting wheat, it's a grain head. It has an outer layer, the hull. So when you're basically getting to the good stuff, you're chaffing the wheat.
Okay. All right, Terry, what is your history with DC? Did you get exposed to the movies first before anything else, or?
Yeah, I didn't really read too many of the mainstream, big, Justice League comics. I was really into Adam West Batman when I was young. It used to come on, right when I got home from school when I was in, elementary school. So that was, home from school, grab a snack, watch Adam West be Batman. So that was, I guess, my kind of first exposure. I kind of intermittently watched, the cartoons when they came on. When I was like high school, college, I got really into the more like Vertigo side of DC, like Sandman and Hellboy and Lucifer, like Watchmen, that kind of stuff. The stuff that was sort of like on the periphery of that, but was sort of its own thing. Because I was like, I don't know, it was just a little more interesting to me than just the like spandex superhero type stuff when I was younger. Yeah, like I actually didn't watch, I think the first Batman movie I watched, aside from like, again, like original Adam West Batman, I feel like was like The Dark Knight. I don't really remember watching like the like Tim Burton or whatever else was making weird Batman movies in the 90s. I think because my mom was kind of like anti-violence for like probably till I was like middle school age, and after that point I was like, they were old by that point, I guess. I don't remember. But yeah, I kind of went, I still haven't seen a lot of the like real campy ones from the 90s.
I think my first exposure to DC in any way was probably the Batman animated series when I was a kid, which I enjoyed, but to me it was second fiddle to the X-Men cartoon. And then when I started reading comic books, it was just Marvel, like just X-Men comic books, basically. I didn't start to really get a grasp on DC characters until they did the DC versus Marvel comic book event. And then it wasn't until I was like an adult then I started reading more DC comics. Like I had the money to go out and buy like the good stories. You know, they had plenty of good stories available by then. You know, Watchmen and the GOG storyline and Justice Society of America, Blackest Night and Green Lantern. You know, so most of my appreciation for DC didn't come until after I was already an adult. All right, and that brings us into DC movie discussion. First, I will ask Terry.
Uh-oh.
Do you have a favorite DC comic books movie?
Oh God. I honestly haven't watched that many of them, and not that many that were good. I did like the Dark Knight like trilogy. Probably that would probably be the ones I thought were like the most solid. As far as the like reboot ones, like I thought the first Wonder Woman movie was good, better than most of the other ones. I've told you my thoughts on the second one. I don't know how much you're getting into that.
All that stuff loaded up. I'm going to give you your moment to do this. We're going to go.
We don't have to do all of that. But yeah, I thought the first Wonder Woman movie was a solid, pretty good. I thought Suicide Squad was entertaining. I wouldn't say it was good, but I'll say it was entertaining. Here's my thing with Suicide Squad. Here's what I always say about okay, I'm a LARPer, if I haven't like said that on here before. And one of the things with like LARPing and tabletop is like it's somebody else is kind of like telling the story and you're a part of it. There's times when somebody will come up with a story and they're like, hey, here's the hook, here's the plot we're doing, this is what's happening. And everybody involved kind of looks at each other like, this is real dumb. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But also at the same time, you're like, I've got nothing else going on. Like, all right, let's do it. And I felt like throughout that movie, all of the characters were just sort of like looking at each other like, is this really what we're doing? Like, this is really what's happening.
I thought Suicide Squad was absolutely awful. And I'm going to get into a point later on this, but it made a ton of money, though. It made over $700 million worldwide for a bad movie.
Yeah, because I think part of DC's problem is DC like takes itself too seriously in a lot of the movies. Not all of them, but I feel like the big ones where they
I
like.
Can see that point.
Yeah, because I feel like with like the big ones like the Superman and like Justice League and Aqua, it's like they were trying too hard to be like dark and edgy and cool, but it just sort of was like, what is happening?
All right, before we get too far into the bad, okay. Dan, what is your favorite DC comic book movies?
Oh boy. So, Actually, gonna have to go with the 1989 Tim Burton Batman. Having said that, I really loved Nolan's Batman Begins. Um,
Yeah.
Dark Knight, Heath Ledger. I mean, holy cow, did he nail that role on many different levels? Um, at the same time, um, Christopher Nolan, great, sorry, great, director, great cinematographer overall. Um, there were still some pretty shaky plot points that other critics have just absolutely tore apart. Um, but
What
I,
about
I,
what
I
about
will
that
say,
1989 Batman movie makes it the best to you? Is it
going with
is it a
Terry.
little skewed? Is it nostalgia, or do you like really believe that script, acting, premise, everything makes it the best?
So I have to say, when the movie came out, we have to remember when 1989 didn't have robust CGI.
Right.
A lot of the props, like it took hours upon hours. Uh, from the interviews, I'm sure that we've all seen and heard on how ridiculous that bat suit was. It was just about as like much of a death trap as the original RoboCop suit. It's like, oh god, it's hot. I can't even move my neck. What is this? But at the same time, Keaton really rolled with it. Um, and to be honest, I don't think that maybe I'm misinterpreting. I don't think that Jack Nicholson took it too seriously. Like he was over the top. He was cartoonish, but definitely a departure from. I can't even remember the name of the actor who played in the Adam West Batman. So like that backdrop of Adam West decades before, the campy old chum, and
Cesar
you know,
Romero. I'm sorry, I was trying to
Cesar
remember.
Romero. Thank you, thank you.
I just remember
Uh,
he had a mustache underneath his Joker makeup because he refused to shave his mustache.
a pro move, by the way. Um, but at least personally, I feel that 1989 Batman, it it was definitely better executed than some of the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. Um, it was something that it was gritty without being super over the top with that. Yeah, obviously, it had its moments, it had its pacing. Um, at the same time, it's also what inspired the Batman animated series, which in turn inspired so much more of the animated DC properties.
We're
Uh,
gonna I'm gonna stop you right there because animated is gonna be like a different discussion point right now.
okay,
All right.
okay,
And I'll just be real quick about my favorite DC movie, and it's going to be the boring choice. It's going to be The Dark Knight. It's a lot of people's favorite. I just think script, acting, execution, everything was on point. The only tiny little nitpick is I don't think Two-Face should have died at the end. I think he should have continued on, especially after Heath Ledger's death. I really think because Heath Ledger was supposed to return as the Joker in the final Batman movie. I think they could have easily just replaced that with Two-Face instead, but they decided to go a completely different route. But yeah, and continuing with the good for now, we're going to talk just a little bit about the animated movies. We're not going to talk about shows because this is DC movie discussion. Animated movies, DC gets a lot of props for doing their animated wing very well. And two of my favorite DC animated movies, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. Just chilling to hear the Joker's laugh as he returned from the dead. And Justice League no, that's the one that G wanted to talk about, but G's not on the show right now. But this is the one I want to talk about. Justice League New Frontier, I think, was a very well done. It was like characters from the golden age of DC Comics in a team up movie. So it's very different than your usual DC Comics animated or live action movie, and it was just done very well. But yeah, Terry, have you seen any animated movies from DC?
I don't think I have.
All right, we'll skip you then.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can I make a solid suggestion?
Yeah, totally.
Superman Red Sun. I'm typically not a huge Superman fan, but that alternate reality version, great story premise, and it really goes through. It deals with different, what I would feel to be fairly adult themes, through the comic media. But yeah, my 2 cents on that.
I haven't seen Red Sun.
Oh, okay. So it's a bit of a play on communist Russia. So what if?
Oh, is it that if Superman landed in Russia instead of Kansas?
Yeah, and what was mentored by Stalin? And I mean, and the going from the collectivist view, and just seeing somebody that had pure intention, just being molded into something that we wouldn't typically recognize.
It's very nature versus nurture themes.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to move it along to the bad now. Taking over this portion of the bad is going to be Terry, who has prepared.
You're not going to make me show the whole thing, are you?
Oh, I'm going to show the whole thing. Go ahead, Terry.
Oh my
God. Talk about Wonder
Woman
1984.
Okay, so I made this after I had watched the movie and went on a solid rant about how disappointing it was and how much I hated it. And
you weren't the only one.
Yeah, and like because I'm a teacher, I will a lot of times when it's like a thing that I can talk for a long time about, I'll be like, I'll make you a PowerPoint about it. So a friend of mine did the eternal "do it you won't" at me. So I did. So okay, so I guess spoiler alert, also cursing alert. I don't know if that's a thing we care about on the show, but so okay, so like silly things. I love me some Pedro Pascal, and he looked like an absolute tool in this movie. I don't understand why they did that. Like, where's his mustache? Like, that's just atrocious. What is with the hair? Like, why? Why are we doing this?
I think he was supposed to be like a Donald Trump character.
Yeah, but like, it was stupid. And why him? Like, why? Just, I had so many questions about this character.
Why
like,
waste your Pedro Pascal?
Right. And it didn't. There was nothing like he was just weird and annoying. He was just like a used car salesman as your big villain. And like, why? Like, why? All right, moving on. Okay. So, and this kind of gets into like my big like feminist gripes about just why are they so bad at making realistic characters. It's the idea that like she was so bent out of shape with this guy that she met for like a weekend, that 70 years later she's still like pining over him, and like, oh no, I'm a god. I learned that I'm a god in the last movie, but like I've just forgotten about that, and I've just been sad for the last 70 years because of Chris Pine. Like, he's fine, but like, you can get over him. That's fine. All right, next one. Okay, other thing that really fucking annoys me. The like, let's give pretty people glasses and pretend like they're ugly trope. Like, Kristen Wiig's character, again, not a person that acts like a human. Like, nobody acts like a human in this movie. Because they're like, oh, I wish I could be pretty and cool and popular, which is the plot of like a high school movie, but not a bunch of professional adults. And like, I hate the trope of like, oh, let's make that's all the girl wants is to be pretty. Like, she doesn't have any other goals in her life.
It came out like 20 years after not another teen movie made fun of the trope. She has
Right, like,
glasses and a ponytail. 20
oh
years
no.
later, and they decide that the trope is fine to try again?
Yeah, and that's okay. So then this is like when I get real angry about things, and it's also got more spoilers in it. Yeah, so like the whole God thing, where like at the end of the first movie was a whole like her kind of discovering these like crazy God powers that she has. Does not really use these at all throughout the second movie, and she's just like being a mall cop at the like. Okay, we're just gonna like beat up some thugs in a mall. Like that's what we're doing now. It's like you have these ultimate powers. You've learned all this thing about like you had this whole like kind of character arc about learning about humanity, and you're just gonna okay, petty mall crimes, cool. All right, so that just didn't make any sense to me. It's also been really long since I saw this. Oh, yep, here it is. Oh, look, feminist protagonist takes stupid pills as soon as the dick shows up. So again, movie is named after her. This is her movie. She's not a side character in this movie. This is her movie. She is literal god powers. She's been like doing something on Earth for the last 70 years in this movie, despite having all of the academic and political knowledge. Because it's like, oh, we're dealing with like Egyptian something. I don't even remember because it's been so long since I watched this movie and I just like deleted it. But like whatever like mythical MacGuffin they were dealing with, like she literally has a degree in the thing they're trying to like learn about. And then all of a sudden, Chris Pine shows up with zero experience, zero like anything. Like he's from 70 years in the past, like has no powers, has no idea what's going on, is not qualified to do any of this. But all of a sudden, like he shows up and she's like, hee, damsel in distress all of a sudden. And they need to make him relevant to the plot by her all of a sudden just like being dumb. And that happens so much in movies. Like in so many of these movies, they'll establish like, oh, look, badass female character. Look how cool. And then like as soon as you introduce the male protagonist, it's like she just sort of is sidelined and doesn't know how to do anything. All right. And then again, like the absolute they just decided like, okay, so how do we justify her like relying on this like zero superpowers vanilla dude? They just do the like, oh, we need to take away her powers thing. So like you had all of this opportunity for like, really cool fight sequences and like, really cool action, but it's all about her like just kind of getting her ass kicked by people that should not be able to kick her ass at all.
No.
When like again, Wonder Woman once again defeated a god by throwing her tiara and decapitating them with it. Like she's a god. I can't say that enough. She is a god. And so the only way they could figure out how to make a movie with her not being as cool as Chris Pine was to just take her powers away. And then just the movie in general, like no one had any consequences in this movie. Like the whole plot of it made absolutely no sense, but they're just like, okay, everybody's gonna like make wishes. All of these wishes are gonna be super selfish, but then all of a sudden, like, oh, we're just gonna give up those wishes. And then at the end, it's like, like Pedro Pascal, like nothing happens to his character. He's just like, oh, okay, I guess I sort of care about my kid. I learned that. Yay, character growth. And then just like everyone just sort of goes back to their life. And the thing I didn't say anything about in this PowerPoint, but it's like also was sort of the big thing was like the whole idea of her just sort of mind controlling this guy. Like he just manifests his dead ass inside this dude that they just like steal his apartment and his body. Like that's real weird. Why? So in conclusion,
I've heard the arguments that it's basically rape.
Yeah, it really is. Like you can argue because like and then at the end they make it okay. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna now go for this random guy. Like no, why?
All right, I just have two quick things to add on to that, and then I'll let Dan take over on the topic. But one, I don't see the star quality in Chris Pine like at all. To me, he's like a charisma-free vacuum. It's like going to the store. Oh, well, Dan. It's like going to the store and just wanting or to a restaurant ordering toast. Like,
yeah, he's just like a dude. Like he's fine.
Yeah,
like he's fine.
And there's certainly plenty of acting roles I think he could do. It's just in this role, I don't see the value like at all. But the main thing I want to get into Wonder Woman 1984 is creative control. After the success of Wonder Woman, they decided to give the director complete and utter control over the sequel, and holy crap, was that a mistake. I don't know if it was just because she was surrounded by yes men who just agreed with everything she said, or everyone was just like, well, the first one did really great, so she must know what she's talking about. Because at some point, through test audiences, through everyone watching the movie, everyone being in the movie, at some point, somebody should have noticed how bad this movie was, and it didn't happen.
Oh, we lost Dan, but we got G back. Yeah, I don't know, like, and I really didn't like kind of deep dive because I love me some deep dives into train wrecks, and I just didn't really do it with this movie. I think because I was just too disappointed, and I just seemed like
even
I
after
was
the movie came out, the director, she like defended it. You know, the whole possessing the guy who was like essentially raped. She was like, well, that happened a lot back in '80s movie, and this movie takes place in the '80s. It's like, it doesn't mean it wasn't okay back then, but people didn't really point it out. Now we know
right.
it's not okay, and it's pointed out. It doesn't mean you can like go back
Yeah,
and do it again just because your
and I
movie
was
takes place in the '80s.
yeah, and I was watching. I can't remember what it was. It might have been. I'm trying to remember what YouTube thing it was. I think it might have been like what the heck is it called? I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically pointing out that like so like 19 might have been 1984, and then Captain Marvel, which I liked Captain Marvel. Like I'll defend Captain Marvel as a pretty solid movie in my opinion.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, but like with both of them, they go, they're both like take place back in time, kind of a thing. And it was sort of like a thing. It's like, okay, if you make a movie with a female superhero, you can show the sexism of that time without really taking any ownership of the sexism that is currently happening. So and I think that was it. It's like, okay, you want to make like a tropey kind of like spoof on 1980s, 1990s movies, but like I feel like, you're still in 2020 or whenever that movie came out. Like you're still being held, like you still need to be held accountable to like being better than that, And I don't think like you can just be like, well, I don't want to be better. I don't want to make a better movie. I don't want to make a better character. I don't want to make a better story. So I'm just going to put myself in a context where I can just explain it away. And that's what that felt like, and to me, in a lot of ways.
All right. Next topic, although I'm not really sure, since you're not entirely familiar with all the characters, the next question I was going to bring up was, what kind of DC movie do you want to see? Like, is there a certain character you'd like to see get their own movie, or is there a certain book, certain story? You've read Watchmen, you've read Sandman, but Watchmen's been made. Sandman comes out tomorrow. So is there anything you want to see that they haven't made?
Actually, what I did read, I read it as an adult. Somebody gave it to me and was like, this is pretty good. I read a bunch of the Blue Beetle comics at one point. And I think that I would like to see, and it was, I guess there's been several different iterations. It was the one with like the kid. I think it was like the second iteration of Blue Beetle.
Unfortunately,
maybe.
They are making a Blue Beetle. I don't know if it's a movie or show, but now they're worried that it might also end up getting canceled.
I would love to see a Blue Beetle movie that had the same kind of like vibe as the Miss Marvel series.
Okay.
Because I really like the Miss Marvel series. Like if we go back and talk about Marvel, like I really, really liked Miss Marvel. I liked how they did it. I liked the style. I liked the story. Like I thought it was a very solid show with a very distinct style. And I would love to see Blue Beetle done in that same kind of like, aimed at maybe more of like a preteen, teenage demographic, like a lot more kind of character driven story. Because the one thing I loved about Miss Marvel and I loved about the Blue Beetle, they have parents. They don't go with the let's kill off their parents like tragic backstory with them. Like I love it. Like if anyone's watching this and hasn't seen Miss Marvel, like I super recommend it. It's super great, and I love her parents. And I love the Blue Beetle's parents because it's like, oh, you actually have like kind of a cute family dynamic, and like parents that are in the picture and care about you. Like,
Is this
that's different.
Ted Cord?
I don't even remember. I think he
Ted
was.
Cord Blue Beetle. I know there's been a few different Blue Beetles.
Yeah, I know he was Hispanic. I want to say Mexican, but I might be
Yeah, I think
wrong. It's been a long time since I read it. Yeah.
Not too far off from what you want to see is a character I want to see get their own movie. It's called Booster Gold.
Oh yeah.
Booster Gold.
I don't know much about him.
He's basically like an idiot from the future, but he treats everybody else like they're idiots because they're from the past. But
that sounds annoying.
So, and he has a lot of ties with Blue Beetle in the comics. Like for a long time, they shared a comic. But Booster Gold is a character I would love to see get their own movie. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. The way DC right now, the way Warner Brothers is cutting costs, I'm guessing I'm never going to see a Booster Gold movie. But even if they weren't in this current cost-cutting state, I don't think they would have ever gotten around to doing a Booster Gold movie. I mean, if you're not even focusing on Green Lantern or a new Superman movie, like if you're not focused on the major characters, how are you going to get to these secondary characters? I mean, Suicide Squad was the risk they took. It paid off financially. The sequel paid off critically, but nowhere near as good financially. So, and now they got problems. Apparently Batgirl was so bad they're not even going to release it on any platform.
Yeah, and just thinking first of all, it's got Brendan Fraser in it, and like people love Brendan Fraser. So like, how do you screw that? Also, that's another thing I watched some of Doom Patrol. I really like Doom Patrol. I would watch a Doom Patrol movie.
But apparently the Flash movie that comes out next year that deals with the multiverse is testing really well with audiences. However, they have a different problem with Ezra Miller, currently on the run from police. Like their main star is gotten into so many legal issues the past few years, whether it's them finding children in his home with weapons laying around, guns. Yeah. Then there's the fact that he was stalking a teenager and the parents had to file a restraining order against him.
Well, that's not great.
He was grooming and stalking a teenager. This is all in the past couple months. So they can't refilm the movie because it deals with the multiverse. Their best option is at the very end of the movie, they could film a quick 2-minute scene of a new Flash showing up. That's like their only hope at this point.
Right. But then at this point, too, because that's the issue. That was the issue with, like people like do you want to, because I assume if they release the movie, he's going to get money for it. So like, do you want to just completely distance yourself from that? Well, I don't know. I didn't know any of that.
It's mind-boggling because people are like, so you're canceling Batgirl altogether, but you're going to pump all this money into releasing Flash with a main star like Ezra Miller, who's causing all these problems.
Right.
I mean, he's been arrested several times in the past 6 months for just getting into physical fights with people.
Right. And I can't I can't fathom a movie so bad that DC red lights it. Like, I mean, not to rag on DC.
Like I said, I said in the news portion that they're getting tax cuts for not releasing it at all. So it's going to save them some money. It's going to save them some money by not releasing it because, one, you have to pay all the distributors, and two, you have to pay for all the press. So that'll save them money. It'll be a $90 million loss instead of a $200 million loss.
Right. And I mean, that's also my, not to be like the conspiracy theory, but, I feel like, whenever you have and again, I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened, but I feel like, anytime, like any of the female-led movies, you're going to get some backlash for the people that are just going to die mad about it. So I feel like, I feel like there's got to be the mentality that you can scoot by a mediocre Flash movie or a mediocre Batman movie, but if you release a bad Batgirl movie, then that's going to make a lot of people, it's going to make a lot of people angry, and it's going to make a lot of people say, I told you so.
I
And
don't
that,
follow how they couldn't come up with a better outfit. Because this looks like a costume from the CW series.
yeah, I feel like I could make that. It
Yeah.
also just actually looks a lot like Captain Marvel, just a different color.
Yeah.
All right.
And DC doesn't really have a whole lot on the slate other than Black Adam and Flash.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And now like I said, they've got the issue of the Warner Brothers Discovery merger going horribly,
Mm-hmm.
and them having to cut costs like crazy. They just announced like an hour and a half ago that HBO Max is merging with Discovery Plus by next summer. So they're merging their streaming services. And they canceled like a Scooby-Doo animated sequel. They're like, there's a bunch of stuff that's going to be on the chopping block. Their networks, TNT and TBS and CNN, they're all going to be having huge cost cutting. All the HBO Max series that were scripted are effectively going to be cut. That's not including HBO series like the Game of Thrones show, Euphoria. Those shows are all safe because they're just HBO, but HBO Max shows are apparently the ones that are at risk. So I
Don't take
don't
away our
know.
5 minutes death.
So I get fans of DC are definitely frustrated because you've got Marvel announcing Phase 5 and Phase 6, and all these characters are getting their own projects, and DC can't get nothing going on, really. I mean, The Rock's been trying to make Black Adam happen for a while, and I don't even know if this movie's going to do very well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is an issue with oversaturation. There's so many streaming services, and also just Disney is just like I feel like just the cultural significance of like the giant monopoly that is Disney, and like that's really what it kind of is at this point, is just like
in their
you can't.
defense, I mean, Disney doesn't need any defense, but when they bought Marvel, they only had Iron Man and Incredible Hulk done. So yeah, they became a monopoly. They're a big chunk of movie box office right now. Like they're not a complete monopoly, obviously, but they're a huge chunk of profits right now. However, when they bought Marvel, that wasn't really a factor in box office because they only had 2 movies, and Incredible Hulk didn't even really do that well. It was really just Iron Man that did well. It became big after DC bought it. Pixar, Pixar doesn't release movies that often. So they only had like 1 movie a year or 1 movie every 2 years at that point that really came out. So that also wasn't really a huge factor in becoming the giant they are today. It became after they purchased Pixar. Star Wars, when they bought Star Wars for billions of dollars, the prequel movies had already happened, and there were like no future plans for Star Wars at that point. Like, so yeah, they bought these properties, but at the time they bought them, it wasn't factoring into them becoming such a big powerhouse. They took it and gave it its value to give it all that money. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that's it. Like you can't compete with Disney money. You can't compete on the same plate. Like I don't think there's any other media company that can compete with Disney as far as Disney money goes.
They knew what was important, and that's the actors. They got Robert Downey Jr. all this money and a portion of the profits to keep him on board for as long as they did. They gave Harrison Ford a portion of the profits of Star Wars so that he would come back as Han Solo. So
I feel like there were trucks of money involved with getting him to do that. There had to have been.
It was also the satisfaction of Han Solo getting killed because that's something he wanted way back in the original trilogy. So him finally getting to kill off Han Solo and the promise of more Indiana Jones because he does like doing that. So I think Disney has done a good job to earn their box office, majority that they have. They've earned it. true, they spent a bunch of money, but they could have done what DC did and spend a bunch of money, or Warner Brothers did with DC, spend a bunch of money on movies that are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Batman v Superman was so toxically bad to me. And then Justice League was even worse. Suicide Squad was awful. I haven't bothered watching Aquaman. I haven't bothered watching, movies that have come out
Aquaman is
after
good.
that people say, no, they're good. The newest Suicide Squad movie is apparently really good. I haven't bothered watching them because those movies were so bad, it tainted it for me. Like, I have no interest in seeing them. It's hard to describe, but it would take a lot for me right now to be interested in another DC comic book movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of because I don't think I've seen any since Wonder Woman.
And I heard how bad that was, because I heard Wonder Woman was okay. Didn't bother watching it again because it was so toxic to me. I heard it was good, but I heard the ending of the movie was a little So I was like,
Yeah.
I'll wait for it to be on TV or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then Wonder Woman 84 came out, and it was apparently just trash.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, well, there went that. Way to go, DC. You already screwed it up.
Right. And another thing too with Wonder Woman was, I think compared to the other DC movie, like compared to like the Batmans and the because it came out right after Aquaman and Justice League, which I didn't see Justice League. I saw Aquaman. Aquaman was trash in my opinion. So I think compared to those, it was better. There was still a little bit of the like, okay, we need to give, there was still a little bit of like, the characters all acting like we need to, like she needed a chaperone kind of, because again, she was the only one aside from like kind of the ending thing, like she was the only one in that movie that had superpowers. Like nobody else had superpowers in that movie. But the other characters are still acting like, oh, we need to protect her, like, which is like annoying, but okay, it takes place in the 20s, like, or teens or whenever. I think it was World War I. So like, all right, whatever. Kind of thinking that like the second movie, we would like, all right, we have now established she is very powerful. She doesn't need these like chuckle fucks just hanging around to make sure she's okay. Like she's fine, but they just went completely backwards with that whole thing.
Another issue I think DC has right now is there's like 5 different Batmans people know. You got the older generation who associate Michael Keaton as Batman. Great, you're bringing Michael Keaton back as Batman. He was in Batgirl, which is now not being released, but he's also Batman in the upcoming Flash movie. You've got people who know Christian Bale as Batman. Like I said earlier, Disney understands the value of actors and making sure they come back no matter what. DC was like, oh, Christian Bale doesn't want to do Batman in a Justice League movie? I guess we'll find somebody else. No, you do whatever it takes to convince him. You give him as much money, make sure Christian Bale returns as Batman, because introducing someone new right away, that can cause problems. They should have known that, because look what happened after Tobey Maguire was not Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man movies bombed. A lot of people do like Andrew Garfield. However, more people didn't like it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
and I think when you have something, because like I feel like Dark Knight was the last time that like people cared about DC movies. Like I'm sure people still care about. There's still people that care about them, but I feel like the Dark Knight movies, like all 3 of them were solid. Like some were better than others, but like that trilogy to me was like a solid story throughout. So and I just don't think they had that after that point.
After that, you got Ben Affleck as Batman. People were very skeptical of it, but a lot of people did like his portrayal of Batman. However, the movies he was in were garbage. Batman v Superman and Justice League were garbage movies. So even if people did say Ben Affleck, he did good. The issue is that he's associated with these terrible movies. Now you got the guy from Robert Pattinson as Batman. And apparently that movie did really well.
I've heard he was good in it. I didn't see it, but I've heard he was good.
I have no interest in seeing it. And I heard the movie was good. I heard he did a good job. However, now you've got Robert Pattinson in this Batman. You have Michael Keaton returning as Batman. You have Ben Affleck returning as Batman again. You've got all these different Batmans. Are you going to do like a Spider-Man type situation, have
Right.
a meet. Won't that so
Multiverse.
Spider-Man wouldn't that be kind of like copying to a lot of people? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know what their end goal is with that. And now you have Joker having its own little universe with Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. So can you
Right.
introduce Joker in the Robert Pattinson Batman movies? Like,
Hmm.
it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's not
And I
cohesive.
think right, and I think that's another place that DC gets into trouble because, Marvel is good at least trying to make it all like kind of make sense in the same universe with, kind of varying results. And like, you got the whole like it's in the multiverse now. That's why things don't make sense, not because we couldn't think of a good reason why it's happened like that. It's because multiverse, hooray.
Yeah.
So they're at least like kind of trying, and also because I think the Marvel movies are not DC. I think tries to do the like grim, dark edge lord, we're serious adult movies too much. At least in like kind of the more recent
Well,
movies.
Campy bombed for them, with the Batman movies. Then they
Right.
went super serious with the Dark Knight trilogy, and it worked like gangbusters. Man of Steel, a little mixed, but it still made them a ton of money. So they were like, okay, let's go even harder into being serious.
Hmm.
And it did not work well. After the success of Guardians of the Galaxy and the failure of Justice League, they were like, okay, let's make Suicide Squad a little lighter. And it's
Hmm.
like, you already completed the movie. Like, you have to go back and do a bunch of reshoots to make Suicide Squad lighter, and they just made a mess of it.
Hmm.
So, and don't get me started on that Harley Quinn sequel, Birds of
I didn't
Prey.
watch any of those, which I feel like I should have, but I didn't.
That was another situation of they just gave Margot Robbie just complete power over that movie, and it hurt them. Like,
Hmm.
these they're actors, yes, and they're directors, but they're not script writers.
Hmm.
What they think is a cool idea, it has to make sense in the story.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of movies for some reason that are just sort of like, okay, let's just see what happens, which I guess has worked with some things. Like uh the Ghostbusters movie as an example. Not the new one. The new one's really good. The one that just came out a few months ago,
Yeah,
like that one was solid. That was really good. I wanted to like that Ghostbusters movie so badly.
I had no problems going to watch it, and then I saw that first trailer, and I was like, "Oh, this looks really bad." Like,
Like
I don't
I
follow.
love all those people. Like I love Leslie Jones. I love like all the people that were in that movie, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, but apparently there was, from what I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not. Like I heard there was not really a script. They were just like, okay, you guys are all like Saturday Night Live people. Go be funny. And like I've heard that it was a lot of like they tried to make them improv a lot of it, and it just was. It was just kind of sad to watch because it was like they didn't. I don't feel like they didn't know what they wanted their audience to be like. One minute they're doing like slapsticky stuff, the next minute they're being like super violent.
I
It
think
just
what I
was.
read was that the director, he had done Bridesmaids, which is a rated R comedy, and like
Mhm.
he was more known for doing rated R comedies, and he had to do a
Uh-huh.
PG-13 movie, so he didn't really know what he was doing. So when
Bridesmaids was funny though.
Melissa McCarthy gets slapped and she goes, "Oh, that's gonna hurt," or something, like
Yeah,
really bad comedy.
yeah. It's it. I that that makes. I didn't realize it was the same director, but like Bridesmaids was a pretty funny movie. But like, yeah,
Yeah,
it makes sense because I feel like it was there was parts of it that were going for that same sort of like raunchy humor, and then there's other parts where it's like campy to the point of being like okay, this is a movie for kids, but then it's like they come out with like, oh, and a dude just like gets dudes are just getting murdered now, and like yeah, it was just I just felt it was just so all over the place, and it was so sad because like I think there was so much potential in so many of those people that were in that movie, and
it is unfair how they had extra spotlight on them because
mhm.
if they don't succeed, it's bad for women. So
Right, and
that's really
that's
unfair, you know. But at the same time, you made a bad movie. If this was all men in these roles, it would still be a really bad movie. you know.
Right. Yeah,
So
and that's it. And that's the like, I feel like people want to point to movies and be like, oh, it failed because the women. Like, no, like these people are phenomenal. Like, I will watch Leslie Jones do anything. Like, she's amazing. I don't know why I can't think of her name, but the other, like, everyone in that movie is great, and everything else I've ever seen them in. It's just that movie is awful. Like Chris Hemsworth, like they because they tried with Chris Hemsworth's character, they tried to make him like, I think they tried to make it a joke about the like, kind of bimbo secretary,
yeah, they
because
did.
he was playing like, yeah, like he was playing the bimbo secretary, and it's like, that's kind of one of the things that's like, okay, I get it, haha, but then they just keep doing it, and it's so ridiculous and over the top. It's just like, okay, but like, why? Why are we like? I feel like we should be at this point past the point of teehee. We're gonna subvert the trope and turn it around, and now the guy's stupid and the girl's smart, haha. Like, that's not helping anything. That's not moving
Concept
anything
alone is
forward.
not enough.
Yeah, like let's actually like let's make characters with depth. Can we maybe let's do that?
I
Which
hate
I
to
thought
say it,
that
but maybe they
Julian
should
did.
have reverse engineered the concept, wrote it for men, and then just changed the characters to female or something.
Yeah,
Like,
like there's no reason you can't do that. Like unless the movie's about your dick, like who cares?
it would
Say
be a
it,
very confusing Ghostbusters movie.
right? Shit's haunted.
I don't know. That first Ghostbusters movie got a little raunchy at times. People forget
Oh
about
yeah,
how Dan Aykroyd was like raped by a ghost.
yeah. But again, like just because you could get away with shit like that in the '80s doesn't mean we should do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole uh, Kristen Wiig getting slimed, like thrown up on by the ghost.
Yeah,
That's not comedy anymore. That was
like okay,
comedy, 30 years ago.
mhm.
Anyway, we've gone off on a tangent.
Yeah,
But
right. It's really like I feel kind of bad for DC that like we just keep going off on non DC things when trying to talk about DC.
the only glimmer of hope fans have right now is DC is actively looking for a Paul Feige type person to take over all their DC comic book properties and turn it into a universe like Marvel. However, they've tried that. It failed with Zack Snyder and Jim Lee.
Mm.
And right now, now it's Warner Brothers Discovery. They already had too many executives arguing with each other and creating problems. Now they've got even more executives with Discovery added to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to cause even more problems. Okay, you want to make a cohesive universe? Does that mean you give up on Batman, which was a really big success for them? You can't do that. Does Robert Pattinson even want to do a shared universe, or does he just want to be Batman? He didn't even get along with his director, but he's agreed to do more movies just because it did so well. So I don't know what the hope for DC is right now. Luckily, I'm more of a Marvel fan, but it doesn't mean I'm not disappointed that I can't go watch a good DC movie.
Right. Does Warner Brothers own like the Vertigo stuff too at this point?
Yeah,
they do. Okay.
Vertigo is part of DC, so.
Yeah, because I wondered with stuff because I would also like to see. I feel like they've done this badly, like a similar concept, but like Hellboy, the BPRD spin-off comics that is just about the Bureau and with like Abe Sapien and all of those characters.
I think
like
after
those
the
were good comics.
Hellboy lost them so much money, I don't think they're gonna want to try anything Hellboy related.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. And which again, like I love Ron Perlman. I loved Ron Perlman's Hellboy. And
David Harbour just said in an interview recently that he now understands that doing Hellboy was a mistake because too many people loved Ron Perlman.
Yeah, because this is like Ron Perlman is so good at doing silly costume characters. Like, that's his wheelhouse. Like you put him in full body makeup, like he will make you money. And he's so good at it. I feel like you can't follow that. And that's probably and I think that's kind of one of those things DC doesn't understand. Like, when you have something that is really solid, you can't just put a younger version in and think that you could just use the same formula and it's still going to work. Like it's not.
DC has a lot of potential with their Vertigo because they don't have to worry about a shared universe. They don't have to worry about any crap. And side comics that are self-contained stories can turn into franchises if they do it well enough. Men in Black was a comic book. It turned into a movie, and then it became a franchise. The Boys right now on Amazon is doing really well. It's a comic book. Lock and Key on Netflix, you know. There's
that a Vertigo?
I don't know. But there's a lot of comic book stories out there that are waiting to be turned into a show or movie that could eventually turn into something bigger. There's a comic book called We Three that I think would make a great movie. However, I don't think it'll ever be made. Do you know what We Three is?
Sounds really familiar.
It's a dog, a cat, and a rabbit who are given intelligence, basically, and turned into weapons, but they escape the lab. So it's them
like Rats of Dim.
It's them trying to run away from the scientists who are experimenting on them. So it's really good. However, it's also pretty violent. So I don't know. People might look at it, see a dog, a kitty, a rabbit. Oh, this could be a fun kids movie. No, it's hyper violent.
Good. I just started. I know you don't watch anime, but I just started watching Made in Abyss, which is has a very adorable animation style. And I'm only a couple episodes in, but I've been warned that like the very cute like animation style and the adorable like children characters are a trap, and it eventually gets really terrible. And I'm like, I started watching it forgetting that this was one of the animes that's always flagged on the like this anime is a trap list.
If it happens gradually, it's not that bad. Look at the Harry Potter series.
Yeah. Well,
we go from adorable kids to holy crap, people being murdered left and right.
Yeah, right.
So if it happens gradually, it's doable.
Yeah. We'll see. And I mean, I've heard it's good. I've just heard it's like a lot of horror involving a lot of like horror and a very dicks. I don't know what like juxtaposed, I guess would be the word, like animation style, where it looks like it's a kid anime, but it's not. I don't know.
I guess that would make things that happen that are shocking even more shocking.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's probably what they're going for. Your mind
wouldn't associate it with that happening, you know.
Yeah.
All right, closing thoughts, Terry. What is your hope for DC? Is it going to be savable?
Give Sandman movie money.
It looks like they gave it a lot. I mean, Sandman's a long time
it looks
to make.
The trailer looks really good, and like this is just real quick, like because I mean Sandman came out. It started in like the late 80s. I think 89 was when it started. I think it wrapped up like 96 or something. And they've been talking about making like a movie or a show like for a couple decades at this point. And I'm glad that I feel like now is a good time for it.
Because I think there's on Netflix, and Netflix will cancel a show if it's not a hit right away.
Right. And I'm hoping, I don't know, because like a part of it is I feel like it's because like when I think it was sort of its most popular in like late 90s, early 2000s. I feel like that might have been because I was kind of like more in, it was, I think like late 90s, early 2000s, that was when I think it was kind of the most popular. So I'm worried that it's been too long and all of the people that were like super into it back then are now like, I'm a grown up and I'm too old for comics now, which is like, but I also feel like people that read Sandman back then are the giant nerds like me who will have been waiting. So I'm hoping that like
a lot of people watch that stuff either not knowing it's a comic book or people telling them, hey, it's really good. You may not like to read comics, but watch this, so.
Yeah. And it looks good. Like I think it looks interesting enough that you could watch it without having read the comics. I hope. They also, Audible's just released the audio play for it a couple months ago too. So that probably got some people in it.
All right, G, we were getting close to wrapping up DC movie discussion, wrapping up the show. But because you just came on, real quick, your favorite DC movie and your hopes for the future.
My favorite one, I guess you could say, like, it's gonna be like the animated because it's like live action. They can't really do like it doesn't do no justice on that. I like the animated. I would say, probably the Flashpoint. That came out like in 2010, I believe. Yeah, that one. I love that one. I think that's one of my favorites, honestly. And The Dark Knight. Yeah, that one. Those are really my two favorite ones.
And what is your hope for the future? Do you think DC live action movies can make a comeback and actually be successful?
I would say if they actually did what Marvel did, like in the other spot in the Spider-Man, and actually listen to the fans, actually go, listen to people who actually like die hardcore fans, it'll be a lot better, like Spider-Man did, and put some new other old characters that I never had in movies. Like, like I said earlier, like a whole, like, yeah, like fan made movies doing a lot better than these places with multi-million dollars, and they're making better suit or better outfits, gear.
I want to be clear here. The reason why Spider-Man listens to the fans is because of Disney and Marvel getting some creative control over there. Because if you leave Sony to their own devices, they release Morbius. All right, so
Yeah, what happened with that movie?
it was a terrible, terrible movie, but it's because Sony has rights over the Spider-Man characters. However, they've allowed Spider-Man to be part of the MCU. So the issue is, okay, well, we have all the other Spider-Man characters still that we can make on our own without sharing profits with Disney. So let's make a movie about one of Spider-Man's villains, Morbius. And it's like, no, people aren't going to want to see that movie. It's a Spider-Man villain. You turning him into a hero? Like,
I mean, Venom. Like, I'll watch Venom movies all day. Was Venom Sony or was Venom Marvel?
Sony.
Like Tom
What
Hardy.
about,
Okay.
what about Black Adam? Isn't he technically a bad guy?
Yeah,
or he's like more of an anti-hero?
He's a DC bad guy. However, because The Rock really wanted to play him, they can't make a movie with The Rock not being the good guy. So they turned Black Adam into a good guy, and it just doesn't really work. Like,
just don't. They need to stop messing stuff up. Just do it the right way, and don't do it at all. How about that? Yeah, and half these people probably that do this, they don't even never probably read a comic book in their life.
That's probably very, very true.
I was like, I went to school. I know this. I'm like, no, you don't, buddy. You playing the Sega Genesis doesn't make you an expert.
All right, so that
Damn it, G, where have you been for the last hour?
My internet been acting up down here. I'm down here in Bama. They're probably still using 32K modems. Hey, don't pick up the phone.
All right. Well, this has been the Nerdery. Thank you to everyone who joined us and is watching this on the replay. And what are your thoughts on the DC movie universe? And we will catch you next time. Bye.